What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast, the Vanguard Live. Dealing with a little bit of allergies this morning as it got super cold overnight, and I'm adjusting a bit. So apologies if I'm sniffling and sneezing throughout today's live stream. But it should be a great show. We got Ron Placone in the house today, once again returning to the Vanguard. Always a pleasure to chat with my man Ron Placone. So super excited to catch up with him. And how you doing, Zach?
Yeah, doing good, doing good. I survived the cold front a little bit better than Gavin did. You're looking like you're having a rough time this morning, but yeah, hopefully you can get some tea in you and feel a bit better later today. But yeah, the weather guard report, as always, it got fucking cold last night. When I woke up this morning and walked outside, it was like 25 degrees. Let me tell you that again, 25 degrees. Last week it was like 83, and it felt like we were living the dream. And today it was just like fucking ice cold. That's Kansas City for you. But yeah, super excited to chat with Ron today. Always, as Thrash Ketchum says, always a great time when we get a chance to chat with our good pal Ron. But before we get into that, did want to begin this episode, like always, with a massive shout out to our Patreon community, the patrons out there that keep the wheels on our van going round and round. Special shout out to the Super Vanguardians, and comrades. Of course, you're all comrades to us. Obviously, not everybody's able to support financially. Just hit that like button and that subscribe button. We really appreciate you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge shout out to the patron community. You guys know what's up. Links in the description if you enjoy our show and want to help support us in the work that we do. Again, hit up that link in the description. It's a great way to support independent media with a left-wing perspective. We wouldn't be able to do the show without your guys' support. So thank you so much. Links in the description. But yeah, we do have our special guest here waiting in the house. Super excited, as always, to chat with Mr. Placone. I guess without further ado, we can welcome him to the stream. What's up, Ron?
What's up, fellas? Look, I don't want to lecture the two of you, but I feel like times like these, I'm reminded that I'm a little bit older than you guys. And Gavin, you are struggling with the cold. Zach is not struggling as much with the cold. And take a look at both of you. Zach is wearing a sweater. You are wearing not a sweater. I mean, that plays a role. You know that, right? Like, that's how I live in Southern California. I still know this. I still remember growing up in the Midwest. You have to dress for the cold. It helps a lot.
That might have been my mistake, honestly. I was like, got pretty cold over the night, and I was just, with like no blanket on and anything like that, fan on. I always like to sleep with a fan on, even when it's cold out. So yeah,
you were also walking around in shorts yesterday.
True.
So you had no idea this was coming. You're just like, I've been living here my whole life. The seasons always change. It's mid-October. How could I have possibly been prepared for this?
I don't know, man. I feel like I used to not get allergies when I was younger. I really never have dealt with them. And now I'm 24, and this year I've been hit like 3 times with like massive allergies. So I'm not enjoying it. It pisses me off. But
no, allergies didn't really hit me until I was in my 20s. So I can relate to that. It didn't bother me. And then I think I'm pretty sure right after college, that was when my graduation gifts. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, allergies are a thing for me now. What's up, Phoenicia? How are you? Hope all is well in the UK.
Oh, damn. Another viewer coming in from across the pond. That's always fun. Gavin and I don't even it was funny. I saw the most relatable Ryan Grimm tweet the other day where he was like, my gamble to never learn the name of the new British PM is looking better and better every day. I was like, I have no idea to this day who took over after Boris Johnson stepped out. And I am so impressed, Venetia, that you have time to understand both your own domestic politics and ours. That is so much more than I feel like I'm capable of. So shout out to you, in addition to the gratitude for the, generous donation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Venetia. Really appreciate that $5. I think it's like Liz Trust or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Do you know about?
Is it supposed to be? And yeah, I'm actually not super well up on this stuff anyway. I'm a little more versed in Italy because I was just over there. But isn't it supposed to be a temporary thing, or is it like the permanent for her?
From what I understand and what Venetia, I believe implies here is that I think it is temporary.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. I'm a real fucking dumbass, guys. You guys give me too much credit for. I'm really not that familiar with how the prime minister system works, except I know that you could do the election whenever the fuck you want to, right? That's the thing that they'll be like, oh yeah, things are going well. At least that's how it works in like France. I don't know why France is the one country in Europe whose politics I've seen to fucking isn't that how it works in France?
I don't think that's how it works in France, but I know that's how it works in the UK because they can basically just like declare an election whenever.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to the process than that. Like, it's not like you can just be like, "Hey, we're doing
Let's
it."
do it.
But yeah, like there's a way, you go through these channels and you can kind of, based on the checks and balances in power. I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of all the different systems either. I just do know that like proportional representation and like parliamentary systems are infinitely better than what we have. Though they are definitely far from perfect in their own right, but they are.
But that's a very American thing to do, like besmirch their, government system. Sure, it's an improvement on ours, but I can still see the flaws.
Well, it's okay to make fun of everything as long as you make fun of you too. Like it's like you can totally make fun of every system as long as you're making fun of yourself the hardest.
True that. Yeah.
And
How was
easy to do in America?
Very fair. Yeah. How was Italy, by the way, Ron? You said you were just in Italy.
Freaking amazing, man. My cousin got married out there, my Italian cousin. I have a lot of cousins over there, actually. Some of them I met for the first time. Some of them I haven't seen in like 15 plus years. Some of them I've seen a little more recently, but by more recently, I mean like 10 years ago. So yeah, it was an incredible trip. I was actually over there when the election happened. So I was
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Gavin's fixing something, but I know he can still hear.
He's handling his sinuses because he didn't put a sweater on.
I
I hope he learned his lesson.
Yeah,
I don't know if he did.
Ron bringing the dad guard energy. I love to see it.
Ouch.
No, I'm kidding.
So they elected Maloney, and by the way, I know that there's been like some edgelord tweeting about her. She is in fact a fascist. I'm sorry, the woman's a fascist.
That's what I thought.
Yes, she is. Dude, I mean, she was part of this like Mussolini movement thing when she was younger. None of them have really denounced that. She's part of the Fratelli d'Italia, which is like one of their farthest right parties. And she is not, I mean, people were like, well, she's going to be anti-establishment. She's not. She is the establishment. So on top of having like staunchly anti-immigrant views, homophobic views, transphobic views, she's not she's all about the imperialism of the United States. She's all about just let's keep this war going indefinitely. She's not anti-establishment at all. And then you look on the other side of the EU, the actual good side, they're going to be giving a lot of relief money to different countries. Italy is one of those countries. They're going to be getting a lot of money. One of the things they're doing with it is they're going to build extensive broadband all throughout the country. You guys know me. I'm quite fond of that. She's not going to do anything to mess with that, as she shouldn't. No prime minister should. It'd be political suicide anyway. So she's not. She is the establishment. She is a fascist. Here's the one thing, again, kind of getting into like, this is the thing they have that we don't have. First of all, it was historically low voter turnout in Italy. Interestingly enough, I think the last time voter turnout was that low was when they elected Mussolini. So they had very low voter turnout, and historically that doesn't go great for them. And but here's the other side of it. They're, again, like they have proportional representation, multi-party, stuff like that. A lot of the parties have been forming like kind of left coalitions with the anticipation she would likely win. So in the results, like the next couple parties were all either center left or left friendly parties, like Movimento Cinque Stelle, which is a 5-star movement. They did very well. They're kind of like this weird post-partisan experiment, and they're changing because different people have joined up and different people have left. So like their kind of overall platform is evolving, but right now they're kind of more aligned with the left. The PD had high turnout, which is basically Italy's Democrats, except unlike our Democrats, they are actually a center-left party, not just a center-left party in name only. So, you had all those parties get higher turnout. So like after her, like the next right-wing party is like kind of far down. And Verdi Sinistra, which stands for Green Left, they got 3%. So, you know, when you kind of take that, when you put that in the perspective of an American, if we had a midterm and the Green Party or like PSL or some party like that won 3% of all the contests, I'd be partying in the frickin' streets. You know what I mean? Like I'd be like, holy shit, they have to come to us now to get things done. We got 3%. We'd be ecstatic, right? So, but yeah, so that kind of like puts it in a little more perspective. I'm not trying to downplay her victory because it's terrible. It's very, very terrible. But, you know, and again, their voter turnout was really low. So only about 60% of Italians actually supported this person. So when I was over there, I personally didn't find anyone that voted for her. You know, I didn't encounter one person that was like happy. It's kind of like here.
Yeah, not to draw the obvious parallel. Like I know it's a real tired analogy, but it does kind of seem like a fucking kind of like Trump, right? Like, you know, phony outsider, definitely still like a closet fascist. I don't know how much of a closet you want to call him at this point. Hated immigrants, ran on that vitriol. Had a false positive message about like, you know, being anti-establishment when really he wasn't. And then on top of all of that, you know, you have a firm divide in the country where like, yeah, Bernie Sanders had just ignited a huge wave across the country in 2016. You know, of course, there was a large bastion of progressive support. So depending on where you were, you might have gone all over the United States and not met anybody that, you know, actually voted for Trump. Like if you're hanging out where you live, Ron, it would have been way different than if you were hanging out where I live, finding a Trump voter. So it just, I don't know. I know everybody gets tired when you like compare everything to Trump, but it does seem like that's at least a similar way to frame it for an American.
Oh no, totally, man. I mean, that's a great analogy. And you know, Trump didn't invent said playbook either. I mean, you know, you could, if you want to like keep the ties to Italy, in many ways, Donald Trump was the USA's Berlusconi. You know, I mean, even in like the types of headlines he tried to get in the media and stuff, he's very similar to when the Italy had Silvio Berlusconi. And by the way, I saw something in the chat real quick. I said 16, not 60. So only 16% of Italians supported her.
For a second, I thought you said 62, and then I like did the math in my head and realized you said 16.
Yeah.
No, you're like, 16. Yeah, only 60% of people support her. That's like nothing. And I was like, wait, that sounds like a lot of people. But
no, that'd be a pretty
nothing to see here. Just over half of the people love this fascist. But no,
I only encountered the 40%.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
great people.
Anyway, thank you so much, James, for the $2. Love for Ron. Absolutely.
Thanks, James.
So much for the super
Thanks,
chat,
man.
But as we have you here, Ron, did want to ask you a little bit about some American politics.
Yes.
One of the things that we've been kind of consistently, talking about with you, obviously you're a big internet guy. You believe, we already mentioned municipal broadband and how, there's financing for it to, be done in Italy. But we also had you on to talk a little bit about some FCC news, if I understand correctly. Did you want to go ahead and intro that for our audience and let people know what's going on?
Yeah, there's a couple big things going on in the digital rights space. We can go ahead and start with the FCC. And, the Biden administration has literally made history as far as their inaction on the FCC. Now, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners already know, the FCC is still in a 2-2 gridlock because Biden's appointee, Gigi Sohn, who is a pro-net neutrality FCC appointee, she still has not been confirmed yet. It's been nearly 2 years. Now it gets better. If she's not confirmed by the end of the year, they're going to have to re-up her nomination, which may not even happen. So we might have history where you have an FCC that doesn't reflect the White House. And you got to ask yourself, why is this going on? This is the easiest slam dunk win here, and yet it's still not happening. Well, first of all, let's keep in mind, Biden, when it comes to net neutrality, Biden is very iffy at best, and that's being freaking generous. This is the guy who started his campaign in a dinner with a bunch of Comcast execs. First of all, he didn't really want to appoint a pro-net neutrality FCC appointee. It was one of the concessions that he made in that Biden-Bernie task force, if y'all remember when that happened on the campaign trail when Bernie dropped out. So that was one of the like solid concessions they got. I think a lot of that stuff is just sort of rhetoric. But that was one of the solid, I will appoint a pro-net neutrality FCC. That was one of the promises Biden made. I guess technically he's kind of keeping that promise, but she hasn't been confirmed yet. He's not using his bully pulpit at all to kind of push the process along, which, by the way, who else are we waiting on? Well, the Senate. And when you look at the Senate, I mean, first of all, on one side, you have Mitch McConnell, who's staunchly anti-net neutrality, always has been. On the other side, you have notorious digital rights villain Chuck Schumer, who, again, Chuck Schumer in the pocket of big tech, has a daughter who works for Amazon, a staunchly anti-net neutrality company, another daughter who works for Meta, a staunchly anti-net neutrality company. So you see conflicts of interest all over the frickin' place here. And we're reaching a point where not only have we lost 2 years of gridlock at the FCC, we might lose an entire presidency's worth, which would be that, as far as I know, that has never happened before, ever.
Well, that's certainly pretty crazy. Another thing, though, in related news, which might give some potential hope to the movement to restore net neutrality, is this bill that's been launched by a couple Democrats, including Ed Markey. It says here Democrats revive the fight for net neutrality. So I'm interested, Ron, to hear about what kind of impact you think this might have, and if you think that this could actually go anywhere, or if it's just one of those bills that will die and we'll never hear about again. But it does say here that Democrats are recharging the fight for net neutrality by introducing a new bill on Thursday that would codify the deeply divisive open internet rules led by Senators Ed Markey and Ron Wyden. The Net Neutrality and Broadband Justice Act would reclassify broadband internet service as an essential service, authorizing the Federal Communications Commission to enforce rules banning discriminatory practices like blocking and throttling certain lanes of internet traffic. So is this something to be optimistic about, Ron?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that we're seeing some bills in Congress, and this is the main one, there have been like some others. There was the Save the Internet Act back in 2019. This is definitely a good thing. It kind of keeps the fight alive, and it kind of keeps us able to hold the front lines. The other kind of good news on all of this is the fact that we still have strong net neutrality protections at the state level in certain states. We have it where I live in California. And the one thing that really does is, from the ISP capitalist perspective, their hands are kind of tied to roll out anti-net neutrality packages because they can't roll it out in places with such a big customer base, i.e. California, New York, etc. So we're definitely holding the line, and that's a good thing, but we got to get it back federally, before they just find a way to break through the line again, So I encourage folks, go to battleforthenet.com, sign that petition if you haven't already. That demands action. You can also, contact your Senate, contact your Congress people, just demand that they act on this, that they encourage their colleagues to act on this. There's no reason. I mean, Trump's appointee, that Symington, I forget, I think Nathan Simon, I think Nathan's his first name. It's like Nathan or Matthew, something like that. That guy had no qualifications whatsoever. I think his only qualification is the guy owned a laptop. He was appointed within a freaking month. Gigi Sohn has been doing this type of work for 30 years. She is infinitely qualified. She's worked in the capacity before, and they're still they're doing all these smears against her because at one point she tweeted that she wasn't a big fan of Fox News. She tweeted that once, so that makes her unqualified to be on the FCC. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's just comically absurd that it's been going on for this long. And I think it's a little bit of incompetence, and it's a lot of bit of apathy, and it's just so frustrating to see.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that really makes me nervous, right, Ron? And maybe, I don't know, maybe you can assuage some of these fears, because when I hear about this, right, and I just know the Democrats, right, I know that there isn't an ounce of fight in these people. I just know it, right?
Yeah.
There's no fight in these people, right? I know you know it, Ron. I'm not lecturing you, right? I'm just loudly expressing the truth, and it's just so. With that being understood, that we're probably going to get fucked on. I say we, the pro net neutrality community is going to get kind of fucked on this. And then I imagine that it's going to be pretty darn tough for the Democrats to win the upcoming presidential election. What are we looking like the real problems are going to be down the road? Like, will it be kind of like a Merrick Garland kind of a deal that'll just go back? The Republicans will appoint like a corporate corrupt, anti-net neutrality, FCC member, and then they'll go back and give Amazon and all the big tech overlords exactly what they want. And then, what does the fight look like from there? Not to skip ahead, but just, out of morbid curiosity.
I think going forward, I mean, first of all, we gotta just continue to put the pressure on to make sure that she gets appointed, regardless on what happens in the midterms. Now, like if the midterms, depending on what happens in the midterms, it may be even harder for her to get confirmed. We'll see what happens here, but or it may not be even like who knows? It's kind of tough to predict at this point. But long run, I think honestly the best thing that could happen realistically is like you get more and more states passing passing net neutrality bills. I think that honestly, because then it's like you're basically just kind of like crippling them at their base, like the ISPs. Like you're basically saying to them, well, you can't unroll an anti-net neutrality package in California, New York, Washington State, Vermont, like wherever. And so the more states that get it, the more it's just going to be a loss they're going to have to take, and then we'll get it back federally. I would prefer we just like get one of these bills through and get it back federally. But, as far as those bills are concerned, you're not going to see anything happen in the lame duck session. And depending on what's going to happen in the midterms, I mean, those bills might fall by the wayside really, really quick. And they'll basically, you'll hear about them again when something terrible happens in the digital space and people who have been taking net neutrality for granted are reminded they can't take it for granted anymore.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. The one fear I have, though, is that if it does go that way to the state-by-state deal, it'll just be, how like Massachusetts and then California and maybe other states as well that I don't know of, they did the whole thing where they were like, oh, you have to classify, gig workers as workers. And then they just
the
sued
AB5
through
thing.
the national courts, and now and then they re-voted on it. And it was the Prop 22 deal. Do you think that there's a chance that that's the route that they would go to like maintain net neutrality? I just worry that these corporations are so fucking powerful now.
Yeah.
And not to be selfish, but I also worry like, what happens with YouTube? Like, do they take politics shows off with net neutrality crackdown? Like, do you have to be like an official, like, I don't know.
Well, it's not so much they would take you down. It's that like something like the Vanguard or an indie media show, whatever it is, won't load as fast as something that pays fees or some kind of situation like that. That's why like a lot of like, some platforms, they do favor net neutrality just because their business model has benefited from it. So they don't want to, they're just like, don't mess with it. Just leave it the way it is. But in reality, in a post net neutrality internet, the big juggernauts would be able to survive, like the big, Netflix could afford some fees, YouTube, Google, they could afford some fees for the things they want to pay the fees for. Same with CNN, Fox News, stuff like that. Who can't? Well, online shows, so there's an awful lot at stake here. And yeah, I agree with your concern that it's like, yeah, if there is a state by state effort, you're gonna see like some kind of pushback from the corporatocracy on the federal level. The thing about this that makes it a little different than say, Prop 22 and things like that is that we've always kind of had net neutrality, and we had it on the books, for part of the Obama administration. And it's only when ISPs, internet service providers, started to try to mess with it that it really became super front and center. So, they're trying to take the internet into a place that we've not taken it yet. So it's going to be harder for them to kind of, sell that.
Interesting. Well, another article that I know we wanted to talk a little bit about, Ron, that I found fascinating and I really am interested in hearing your opinion on is this one about Section 230, as it says here, how the Supreme Court could break the internet as we know it. the Supreme Court this week announced it will take up a pair of cases that could fundamentally change the legal foundations of the internet. Both cases ask the justices to consider how far protections that shield websites and social medias from legal liability over what users post on their platforms should go. These protections were created in a portion of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, known as Section 230, a provision that has been called the 26 words that created the internet. Section 230 did two crucial things. It established that companies operating websites or social media platforms could not be held legally responsible if their users post content that breaks the law. It also granted them the right to curate, edit, and delete user content as they see fit. So before we get more into this case and the precedent that might set, what's your opinion of Section 230, Ron?
Oh, I'm 110% for Section 230, and I am very against blowing a hole in it. And the reason I am, this article kind of sums it up pretty nicely. There's a lot of misconceptions around Section 230. When people go around saying it's the social media shield, and if we just get rid of it, well, social media won't be able to do, the things that they're doing, that are concerning. But that's a gross oversimplification of what it actually is, because it applies to all users on the internet. It applies to personal websites. It applies to online classifieds. It applies to you. It applies to me. It applies to everything. So saying like, oh, well, Section 230 is just a social media shield, that's like saying, oh, free speech, that's just a shield for Nazis. Like, no, everyone has free speech. And Section 230 is a similar thing. Section 230 assures free speech on the internet. So the solution is not to blow a hole in Section 230. The solution is to add additional policy that meets the moment, that meets where we are with technology, and, kind of dictates how these social media juggernauts need to behave. Similar to what happened with free speech. We didn't decide, oh, we need to get rid of free speech. What we did decide was, oh, we need to have some policy that really kind of clarifies this stuff. For example, you can't defame somebody. That's against the law. If you do that, that's not protected speech. You can't incite violence. That's not protected speech. You get the idea. Like, there's 9 things that are not protected speech. It's a similar thing here. Instead of blowing a hole in Section 230, that is largely a very positive thing, have additional policy that kind of dictates what these social media companies, the laws that they need to abide by. My personal take, they should have to follow the free speech laws of the United States.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. I mean, Section 230 is absolutely essential for, obviously, all of us to do our jobs. And it's also just ridiculous to think that anyone would even suggest holding a social media platform responsible for what some user posts on it. I mean, think about all the people that are posting on every different social media website, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Of course, there's going to be a handful of people posting some false information or something that could be considered defamation. But in that case, you would go after the user itself, not the platform. I mean, that's like if I was having a conversation with someone in a Target and I defamed them, and then they tried to sue the Target company because that's where the conversation took place. I mean, these are really just platforms to facilitate dialogue, to facilitate conversation and discourse. But obviously they can't be held responsible for everything that's said on these platforms. I think that's ridiculous. And no one really wants to live in a world where they're exerting that much that much power and control over the users of their websites. I mean, that would be ridiculous.
Well, the people who are, for changing Section 230, they say, you have these social media platforms that are making these editorial decisions, and they're not really giving people an explanation, which is totally true. That's absolutely true. And I agree that that's a huge problem. However, again, blowing a hole in Section 230, that's not the way you solve that problem. That will make it infinitely worse, because guess what? In a post-Section 230 world where you have people, suing for whatever, guess who can withstand those types of lawsuits? Facebook. Guess who can't? Any other type of budding social media platform. That's why, people like Mark Zuckerberg, they're fine with changing Section 230 because they know that it assures they're going to be the big man on campus forever, because no one will ever be able to challenge them. So if you're for blowing a hole in Section 230, you're on the same side as Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and big tech, and on the opposite side of every digital rights organization in the world. So I don't know. I'm thinking it's a good thing.
It definitely, it just sounds like it's going to create the exact problems that print media had, right? Where it was all vacuumed up by the fucking oligarchs, and then the internet burst a hole in that, and now finally people could get some independent ideas out, and it would just restrict it all again, the same vacuuming up that capital always does, always restricting free speech whenever it has the opportunity to, which is obviously massively frustrating. But for the people who in our audience are curious, Ron, what would be your solution? Obviously, we don't want to nuke Section 230 because of all the massive protections that it gives us, but we also, I'm pro regulation, especially of these big tech companies.
Sure.
What would be a response to somebody that says, "Hey, I totally see why free speech is important, but I'm concerned about the editorial decision making that's occurring
Sure.
by these social media companies, the way they curate content to drive you to consume more content. How do we regulate that and balance that while maintaining our online freedom and rights?"
So I think there's like twofold things going on here. I mean, first of all, I think that we need, policy needs to be passed that basically says these social media companies need to follow the free speech laws of the United States. I mean, we greet these things like, oh, we've never encountered this stuff before. We've been encountering it for a really long time. We have laws around it. They're literally called free speech laws. You just apply it to our digital village, like it really is. I mean, I wouldn't say it's simple because free speech law is not simple by any means, but we got these laws in place. Let's use them. The other thing I think is stronger data privacy. When you talk about how Facebook forces you to consume and stuff like that, Facebook has an algorithm where they're monitoring everything you do. They're selling it to third party advertisers, and then they also feed you more stuff that's in your bias. That's why when people say, "Oh, Facebook has, a conservative bias or a liberal bias or this or that," Facebook just has the bias of their users. So, like when you see these statistics that conservative news sites are getting more traffic on Facebook, well, that makes sense because generally speaking, and again, this is a generalization, but generally speaking, older people tend to be more conservative generally. Who's on Facebook? Generally, older people. So, because they tend to be more conservative, what's Facebook going to feed them more of? Conservative news. Because it's all about the algorithm. They don't really give a hoot what you're looking at. As long as it's something like, their overlords approve of, they just care that you're staying on Facebook. That's it. So, better data privacy puts a stop to all that, and we should have it anyway. So, better data privacy laws, policy that actually meets the moment instead of blowing a hole in policy that for the most part is working very well and is important for the sake of the internet. Those would be, my solutions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the consensus that we've arrived at over here on the Vanguard as well. We have a lot of runway that we can trot out before we actually have to do something so drastic as to, essentially nuke what made the internet, free in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, totally, man. Well, my kind of like wish, like my kind of long-term goal that I would just like to see in the world is I would like to see someday like a digital bill of rights, that's really extensive and it covers everything from free speech on the internet to net neutrality to municipal broadband and like everything in between because all these things, no pun intended, are connected. And I would like to get like different organizations behind it, like different grassroots groups, different, everything from labor to climate to, of course, digital rights and different political parties behind it, and see if it could someday be legislation. But, that's a very, very long-term goal. But at the end of the day, I think that's the solution we need.
Yeah, do you think, I know you're not much of an electoral guy, but I do want to just throw this one at you. Do you think that over time we're going to see this kind of conversation be more integral to, I hate to resort to this, but it does seem like it's the only way to introduce brand new policy into the minds of, the masses in this country, because that's when people start paying attention to policies. Do you think a presidential candidate would ever make this a part of their platform? Do you think it's because I think it resonates
Well,
with
Bernie
people?
did.
Right, I just mean in a
mean-
more vocal way, because I feel
Oh,
like
okay.
Bernie's like his big policies were, Medicare for all, college, Green New Deal, those, raising the minimum wage. Like obviously, I don't doubt that Bernie supported this. I'm sure he did. This is one of those things that, I mean, regulating big tech is like that. I mean, Bernie's on the money about that. Sometimes he makes some fringe poor decisions, but I just mean like, do you think somebody will put that on as like a flagship? Because it seems like it would be across the board popular. You know what I mean? Like,
It is popular, but here's the thing, dude. Yes, it is popular, but it's one of those things that you have to take an extra step to get to it. You know what I'm saying? And so I think because of that, you're not going to see somebody put it as like a flagship thing. It could be among their pillars. And that's something, by the way, you are seeing that some in other countries. And there's some things like in other countries, you'll see these new political parties where one of their big things is municipal broadband and climate change, because there's such an obvious bridge to be had there. We are living in a digital village. We need to foster it because it is going to help us mitigate climate change. If more people are working from home and that's less cars on the road, that's helping. Obviously, it's not the be all and end all because not everybody can do their job from home. But like when you expand the digital village and you expand it in a way that it's equitable and accessible to everyone, that's a really good thing, especially with the climate climate collapse looming at us. So yeah, I would say like main flagship, like uttered in the same breath as Medicare for all, Green New Deal, probably not anytime soon. But like a pillar, I'd love to see that. I don't know if we are or not, but I'd love to see it. I mean, here in the United States, I mean, we have a hard time getting electoral candidates who their pillars aren't, God, guns, and freedom or whatever the fuck. So,
Got a problem with freedom, man? What the hell? No, I think that's super interesting, though. I did want to ask you about something else too, Ron, and that's the metaverse. I've been kind of trying to figure out like how exactly seriously to take the whole concept of the metaverse from Facebook, which is like they've kind of rebranded into Meta now. This report recently came out, the $1.2 billion metaverse horrified by report. It only has 38 active users, which is hilarious. Now, apparently they pushed back on this and said it's actually more like 8,000 users if you look at it in a different way, but that's still pretty dismal. And again, I'm a little bit conflicted on how seriously to take all this, because on one hand, it clearly isn't really taken off yet, but also with the amount of money they're putting into it, it seems like it's always possible too that it could kind of catch on at some point and really restructure our society in this kind of like virtual reality sort of dystopian way. Do you have any thoughts on the metaverse and like how it could affect our society going forward?
Is this connected with like Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, all right. I was just making sure it wasn't.
Yeah, Meta is like the name of the whole kind of umbrella company, but the metaverse specifically is basically like the Matrix. It's like this virtual reality that they're creating, and you can do business meetings in it, or you can like do educational seminars, or you can do video games. That's the idea, but it doesn't really seem to be taking off much yet.
Yeah, Sims IRL.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not super fluent in all the ins and outs of metaverse specifically, but as far as like, Mark Zuckerberg and his aspirations, I mean, it's one of those things where I will, kind of chuckle when it hopefully doesn't work out the way he wants it to. Kind of like, I mean, it's like what CNN Plus failed, like, oh, you mean people didn't want more CNN? That didn't work? Really? People didn't want more of your stuff? I can't believe it. I think it's kind of a similar thing here. It's like we have Zoom, we have Facebook, we have, all these other things. So I feel like he's potentially, maybe biting off more than they could chew with this one. And I hope so, because, this is kind of the data mining surveillance king. So you don't want him to have, all kinds of power here.
Yeah, it also looks like dog shit. Like it looks like the graphics that I played World of Warcraft on when I was in 6th grade would like bury this in the sand. And I remember like it just seems like a real half-baked concept. Like why would everybody start doing this? It sounds like a joke right now, but I'm just worried that joke is what turns into a very, very real horror movie. But I'm with you, Ron. I hope it just eats shit like CNN Plus did.
Totally. But yeah, you never know because it's like, I mean, there was one point in time where, everybody was just like, why would we go on Facebook? We have MySpace. Um, you know, you might not remember that, but I do. I'm old enough to remember that,
I mean, there was a time when people said, "Why would anyone go on the internet? That's stupid." And then now
right?
we live in an entirely digital society. So yeah, things can be met with sort of reticence at first, and then thoroughly embraced 5 or 10 years later.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah, and it is trippy how like I mean, and there's a lot of interesting books on this topic, but like it's just the concept of like adaptation, where you always have like this wave of early adapters, and then even though it doesn't catch right away, they end up being brand ambassadors, not even on purpose. They're just basically like, hey, look at this thing and look how great it's working. And then slowly but surely it does kind of grow. So, but I feel like in this case, it's like you're just sort of repackaging things we already have. And that's usually when things fail. Like Facebook became a dominant social media platform because it offered something nowhere else was offering. And it was in the right place at the right time. It was a little more exclusive. It was a little more, regimented because MySpace was slowly becoming, like an advertising trailer park. So it was right place, right time. It offered something new. This doesn't really seem to be offering something that's not just a repackaged version of stuff we already have. And the stuff we already have is stuff that people like, similar to CNN Plus. Well, that's just I mean, it's just people already don't like CNN. Why do they want like additional shit? I mean, at least, and I'm no fan of MSNBC, but at least the Peacock folks, they started making programs and TV shows and stuff like that to offer people something. They weren't just like,
Yeah,
hey,
Peacock's actually kind of underrated. Peacock's not bad. It's not a
I mean,
terrible
they might
streaming
have good
service.
shows. I mean, well, they did I watched some of the Fresh Prince remake, and I
Oh,
couldn't get
nice.
into it. But I mean, to each their own. But
It's the one place where you can watch The Office, so that's the reason why it's
really,
around still.
see,
Yeah.
so they were at least from a marketing standpoint, that was like smart of them to do. Whereas CNN Plus, they didn't. I mean, they could have been smarter. They could have been like, we have a bunch of unseen Anthony Bourdain stuff that's
Yeah.
never been released before. They would have gotten some signups if they did something like that. But
Right.
instead, they were just like, more CNN. Have you had enough yet? Nope. Yep. You have? Oh, crap. I guess we're done.
Yeah, the other thing about the metaverse that I think is like kind of doomed it to fail is the fact that you have to wear these like ridiculous goggles for it to work. So they're trying to sell it as like this new tool for work situations. They're really emphasizing like, educational instances where it's like pretty cool, like put this on and you can do this in class, or, you can do your work meetings this way, and, be metaversing in the office and stuff. But like no one wants to spend their whole day wearing this like giant headpiece that you can't see out of, and that's like obstructing your vision, that starts to become uncomfortable after wearing it for 30 minutes. So I think that's a big element of it too, that's going to prevent it from going as mainstream as Zuckerberg probably wants it to. Also, the fact that Zuckerberg refuses to disassociate himself as a person from the brand of Meta and Facebook, I think is a real problem, because he's one of the most unlikable people around. Like, check out his recent conversation on the Joe Rogan Experience if you don't know what I'm talking about. But like, he really just doesn't come off terribly relatable. He's not very good at like communicating. I mean, I know it's cliche to say, but he just he just has that very like robotic kind of alien vibe to him, and he refuses to separate himself from the brand. All of the promotional trailers and material for the metaverse have his goofy little, shitty CGI avatar, and he's talking with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it looks like garbage. And I think that's probably turned off a lot of people, where if he just stepped away and let more charismatic and, better communicators take that role, maybe it would be doing better. But no one likes Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I mean, when you're at his level, you got to just be like power drunk to the nth degree. But like one place before we get off the topic, I did want to mention the other place I really want to point folks to. The Supreme Court is ruling on these two cases that could blow a hole in Section 230. And, our Supreme Court is, not the greatest. They're just a bunch of dogmatic theocrats. So who knows what they're going to come up with when they rule on these things within the next few months. So one thing you can do to kind of prepare for a much more vulnerable internet, look, our DMs are really not safe right now. In fact, there was another report that happened recently. A police officer in Louisville was using a bunch of databases to try to troll for nudes, which is so messed up. It's so just, oh my God, gross.
That's such cops being cops, the horny pig
know,
bastard.
dude. I know. And so, and how this connects to Section 230. Look, in a post Section 230 world where social media platforms are kind of on edge, they're going to be trolling your DMs for whatever if they're suspecting anything at all. And they already do that. Facebook turns over DMs to law enforcement on the daily. Usually it's people looking for abortion information because we live in a post Roe v. Wade world. So, you know, a post Section 230 world, that's going to amplify that to 11. So you can go to the website, makedmsafe.com, which is the full URL, makedmssafe.com, which of course means DMs, but makedmssafe.com, that demands encryption across all social media platforms, which protects your messages way better. So go to makedmsafe.com. Please do sign that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fucking crazy. And we already know our shit isn't safe, right? Every powerful agency is exploiting us and extracting us for our metadata. But like, it's shocking to me that this has just kind of fallen as like an existential thing that like has to be this way. So it's nice to have in this at least one instance like a tangible way to sort of like fight back against our digital exploitation, if you will, right? And remind everybody that you actually do have a right to privacy, and it was one of the pillars of this country. And it's oddly enough one of the pillars that for all the hooting and hawing about like, oh, I'm a fucking constitutionalist, I'm a traditional American valueist, you don't hear a lot from those people about our right to privacy. But I think it's a real solid argument in the digital age to say, hey, man, you actually don't just have a right to exploit me without my fucking consent and extract all of my data without my consent. And, we can, pass legislation to ensure that if you do that, it's a crime.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, and that kind of bleeds into the frustrating thing about this this entire beat. There's a lot of people that they use the buzzwords really well. Like they use the like big tech surveillance, like they use these buzzwords really, really well, but they don't actually dive into what it means. Like they don't actually dive into like what big tech is actually doing, how your data is actually very vulnerable. I mean, it's like, and it's a little frustrating because it's like a lot of these policies do go under supported. And I don't think it's that people don't care. I think it's just, when you just use the buzzwords, that's really sexy. But when you dive into what the buzzwords actually mean, well, maybe that's not quite as sexy, I think it's still sexy, but, to each their own. Sexy is subjective, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're talking about policy and the weeds and stuff, it's tough to keep people's attention. But it is a conversation that has to be had. And I feel like once you get over that initial hump, people will, they'll get outraged by it. You know what I mean? At least, especially with younger people. I'm sure older people or people who are, have spent any meaningful amount of time on the internet, but particularly people who are around me and Gavin's age. Like the internet is like, where have we spent more time in our lives on anything than the internet, right? I've grown up with the internet. I don't remember not having a computer. My friends who are slightly older than me like to drag me for not remembering dial-up. I don't. I just remember logging onto the computer and fucking being able to do whatever I wanted. I remember the earliest memories I have were like playing poker with my dad on his lap, like probably like 04, right? Like, and you just sat at the computer, right? Like, I don't know. This is like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I remember. So did you ever have AIM? Was that like totally after you?
I don't know what AIM is. I know I had a
AOL.
PC.
Oh, wow. Okay,
it was like, it was like MSN, you hit Internet Explorer and then you sign in and,
Okay, so
I remember my grandpa used to be able
that.
to send me chat messages because he was the one that set up my computer.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, because I am a little older than you, like I do remember all that stuff, but sometimes it blurs like what was when, you know what I mean? So I guess Internet Explorer would have been a little, because yeah, back in the day they had these things. Honestly, I barely remember this stuff, but they had like these startup discs and it was from AOL, America Online, which I think they've since merged with something. But, you know, they would have these startup discs, and that was like a lot of people's intro into the internet. And then AIM stood for AOL Instant Messenger. And it was like the instant messaging. I mean, it was basically like social media before there was social media. And you had a screen name, and you would and there were these.
So I do vaguely remember that kind of stuff. That was when I was first getting on the internet, and like I said, this is like lame. I was like 5 or 6 years old, but like I remember I always played chess with my grandpa, and we would play either chess or Texas Hold'em poker on the internet, and yeah, that was with the little like instant messenger button in the little game window that came up, and yeah.
Hey, good for you. I still don't. I've played chess a couple times in my life, and I still need to like relearn the rules every time I play.
Oh, I'm dog shit at it. Gavin actually spanked me the last 2 times we played chess, so now we don't play anymore.
Oh, all right. Yeah, no, I just there's so many rules. I mean, it's a fun game, but every time I play it, I mean, I'll play and then I won't play again for like years and years. So I'll be like, I'll play again, and I'll be like, you need to teach me. I know the horse goes in an L. That's all I remember. The horse makes an L.
And the queen can move however in whatever direction she wants, you know, diagonally,
the queen can do
forward.
whatever and can't, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the king can do whatever too, but only one space at a time, right?
Yes, only one space at a time. So you'd think the king would be the most powerful, but it's actually like one of the lesser powerful pieces on the board, where the queen is like the real powerhouse.
Whoa,
if you take out someone's queen, then like the game's like, you know, it's coming to an end. If you take out your opponent's queen, like that's a pretty big L for your opponent. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, no, I do know that. Now how one takes out a queen, that's where I'm like pretty foggy. But
catch him off guard. Catch him off guard. Hit him with that knight L.
Oh yeah, no, I know that. So the knight does an L too. I thought it was just the. Oh wait, the horse is the knight, right?
The horse is the knight. Yeah.
And the queen can't do the L. She can just go forward as many times as she wants, diagonal or backwards or side.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah, it's
and
a
the
fun
knight
game.
is the only one that can jump over another piece in its motion because it's got a horse. Anyway, there's some interesting rules.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I don't know. I've had an easier time. I mean, I was always more of a checkers guy as a kid. That was a little more simple and straightforward.
But anyways, I know Gavin's currently, dealing with his ever-running nostrils right now. Ron, did we have any more news that we wanted to get on that we didn't cover today?
That was the main things I wanted to cover today. Thanks so much for having me on. And again, those websites to point people to for digital rights sake, battleforthenet.com and makedmssafe.com. Just makedmssafe.com. And go to antitrustvotenow.com. and continue to apply pressure for those antitrust votes. We still haven't gotten the vote. They're in deadlock now. So, it's not great, but hopefully post midterms, we will get those antitrust votes because that's historic antitrust legislation. I know I've talked about it on your show a good bit. So we got to keep fighting, folks.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for coming back on today, Ron. Sorry about my allergies. I know I'm not in top shape today, but we really appreciate chatting with you.
You know what, man? I'll tell you my big secrets for dealing with colds.
What's that?
First of all, vitamin D is always your friend. That's a good thing. Pho is my big go-to.
Yeah.
I get a big old bowl of pho, and I use as many of the hot peppers as I can take. You know, you put them all in there because that'll just clear you out, man. You eat that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Hot soup. It's nature's healing. So usually for me, I do a big old bowl of pho, and then I do all those what do you like those emergency packs, the like vitamin
emergency or whatever.
Yeah, I do a bunch of those, and if I could before I go, if I can plug some stuff I got coming up, I do have my first show of 2023 booked. I'll be in Tucson, Arizona, January 28th. That show's going to be fun because it's at an indie movie theater. So it's not just a stand-up show. We're also going to be screening my short film Loner. That film is finished now. You can, if you're one of my patrons, you can watch it already. But we are going to have the first live screening of that short film on January 28th in Tucson, Arizona. You can get tickets at my website, ronplacone.com. And if you get tickets soon, you can use the promo code Lucy at checkout for an early bird special. So you can get cheap tickets for a limited time only. So if you're in Tucson and you think you want to check that show out, Get tickets now. Don't wait. Get them now because they're cheaper now. So romplacone.com. And then I'll be in San Diego February 17th and 18th. So everyone in San Diego, go to romplacone.com for info on those shows. And yeah, Twitter at Romplacone, YouTube Romplacone. You know the drill.
Absolutely, man. So, thanks so much for coming on today. Always exciting when we get to get our news on, talk about the internet, and yeah, just gab a little bit with you, Ron. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you.
Back at you. Thanks a lot, guys. Be well. Feel better, Gavin. I believe in you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's really just these allergies. I don't even think I'm like actually sick. I literally just think it's allergies. It's happened a couple times this year, but really apprate chatting
Charlie
with
has
you, man.
another great recommendation: tea, soup, and weed. Those are all good ones too.
I was already planning on that, man. But yeah, really appreciate it, Ron. We'll see you next time.
All right, y'all. Peace.
Peace out, man. Yeah, great chat with Ron as always. Again, sorry about my allergies today, guys. Really fucking annoying, to be honest. But anyway, huge shout out to Ron for stopping by, and a huge shout out to the patrons as well. Thanks so much for keeping the show afloat in these trying times. Really appreciate it. The link's in the description as always.
Yeah, shout out to you all. I didn't get to comment on it at the time, but I did appreciate the chat commentary, the side rolling about Warren G and regulators. That's an interesting throwback you guys decided to talk about today. Anyway, peace out, everybody. Shout out to the patrons, and we'll be back.
Yeah, see you guys next time.